Thank you to the Untangling Circularity podcast, our sponsor for the month of December. The Untangling Circularity podcast tackled unanswered circularity economy questions by addressing these questions head on and bringing in experts. Co-hosts Cynthia Power and Laura Novich give shape to the answers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to ESG Decoded. My name is Erika Schiller, and today we're interviewing Dan Diehl. Dan is the CEO of Aircuity. Dan, we'd love to hear about your background and how you came to your role as the CEO of Aircuity.
Sure. Hopefully can answer that one pretty easily. So I actually was an engineering student out of college and joined kind of like many in our industry, joined this space, what I call the built environment, starting with a large company, Johnson Controls, out of college as an engineer, then a sales engineer, and then kind of a lot of different roles and responsibilities with the company. Had a great time there, great career over 11 years. And I kind of went on to be an entrepreneur after that. I actually spent a decade in the lighting space, so good familiarity with other technologies in the built environment and applying them as well. And that actually kind of entrepreneurial bent led me to join Aircuity. It's a little bit longer story there. I met the original founder, Gordon Sharp, in 1991, actually, a long time ago, when I was working for JCI. And then this Aircuity was his second venture, and we had known each other and always respected him. He's a very, very prominent figure in ASHRAE and in our industry. And kind of the new technology, I think the coolest part of the story is I kind of saw lighting getting really optimized and commoditized, if you will, in terms of like LED and where it was headed. And I thought about what is going to be the next big efficiency gain in the built environment. And it was really around airflow and airflow management. And so when Gordon and I spoke back then, even though Aircuity was a very young company, decided to join it and see if we could really make something of it. And that was almost 14 years ago today. So it's been a little bit of a longer journey than maybe kind of originally thought. But it's not atypical in the built environment. Things take a little bit longer to kind of germinate and get embedded from buildings are around a long time. They're 50 to 70, sometimes even 100 years life cycle, right? So things don't turn over sometimes as quickly, but once technology gets really proven, and it tends to be adopted, across the broader footprint. So that's been my journey. It's really kind of like three different careers, but all centered in the built environment and all related to both new construction and making existing buildings more energy efficient, more sustainable, and hopefully operating better.
That's great. And Aircuity may be new to many of our listeners. Can you please share what the company does and how it relates to ESG?
Yeah, happily. So Aircuity is, at its core, we produce a platform which is I call it an enabling technology for airflow optimization. So it's an indoor air quality monitoring platform that gets deployed in commercial buildings. So it's not in residential; it's large commercial buildings, and it's meant to dynamically control the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. So we overlay on top of the building automation or lab control systems that exist in a building, and we try to optimize that. And in order to do so, we provide a condition that says the air is very clean, you're doing really well, so therefore we can use less air, and so we can get a lot of energy savings, a lot of efficiency gains. And on the counter side to that, when there's an event detected or a situation of our system seeing that there's high particulate levels or volatile organic compounds or high CO2 levels in a space, you want to actually provide more ventilation where and when you need it. So the important part about that is you're trying to optimize both sides of the equation. So Aircuity at its foundation produces and provides that platform. We also provide data and analytics to help clients understand what's happening in their buildings related to indoor air quality. and some basic level airflow optimization, fault detection diagnostics. We also have parts of our company which provide turnkey solutions, so we can design and build and kind of help customers implement airflow optimization projects. And then we also have a ongoing services and data and analytics platform that we provide our customers with sensor assurance and warranty of our equipment. So it's a I would try to wrap it under. It's a comprehensive solution and approach to providing what clients need in order to make their facilities healthier, better, more productive, safer, and then also as energy efficient as they possibly can.
All right, so you're really focused on the improving air quality and managing HVAC units to serve the quality and experience in the built environment. Can you share about the scale of HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and indoor air management that can have on a carbon footprint? How big is that impact?
The impact it varies depending upon the type of building or the type of facility we're talking about. As a whole in the built environment, HVAC is far and away the largest area to attack and address as it relates to carbon emissions in the footprint of the built environment. Typically the built environment is attributed to somewhere in the different reports, different measures, but somewhere north of 28%, and as much I've seen reported as over 40% in terms of what the built environment impacts as relates to carbon emissions. So tackling the built environment as a group is super important. And then the second part of that, and sub tier to that, is the largest portion of that is going to be HVAC related. There's a lot of things happening in the world, and some of those things are kind of in conflict. Air conditioning is growing dramatically as the conditions around the world improve and more people demand air conditioning. That planet's getting hotter. More people need air conditioning. Kids are staying home from school because they don't have it in these old school buildings, et cetera. And then you also see from the post-pandemic world people wanting to use more fresh outside air for health, productivity, and safety reasons, right? So bringing in more outside air actually drives energy costs up. So this is one, if not the most impactful area to address and to attack in terms of making the built environment more efficient. And the goal is to get to carbon neutrality. So kind of how do you do that, right? So how do you optimize both sides of that? You want health, wellness, productivity, but you also want it to be as efficient as possible. So you really want to optimize both sides of that equation, and the answer is really you need to minimize the amount of airflow in buildings when conditions are really good, and you need to actually provide more air where and when it's needed when a situation arises where either CO2 is high or there's volatile organic compounds or high particle levels. And in some cases, you actually want to monitor the outside air and ensure that you're not bringing in more unhealthy, like a lot of these cases with wildfires, et cetera, recently, where you want to minimize the amount of outside air you're bringing in because that could be the cause of the unhealthy condition inside the building. So we have a methodology and a way to do that. So all of that kind of comes under the umbrella of this is the biggest challenge that I think that we're facing. And we continue to learn and improve and really try to tackle that. And I think again, you don't want to take it away. We don't want to create energy savings in ESG over the health, productivity, safety of whether it's kids, teachers, workers, and or researchers. All of the above need and want to be in working environments and learning environments that are healthy, safe, and productive, right? So,
Dan, when we discussed earlier, you were sharing a recent New York Times article related to indoor air quality and the impact on schools. Could you share a little bit more for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of, I've been working in K through 12 for, oh my gosh, the better part of my whole career, actually, whether it be selling building automation controls and working for just basic building automation systems in them, and now at Aircuity, optimizing ventilation. I think all of this goes together, whether it's K through 12 or higher education, or even if you go into research spaces. One of the ways that we talk about the built environment today is that they're all really considered critical environments. Like, we used to think about critical environments as just research spaces. But if you are in a hospital and you're in an OR, it's very critical that you've got clean air so you don't get sick from your infections from your procedure. If you're in a classroom, whether it's higher education or K through 12, you need to have the right amount of ventilation to keep CO2 levels down. That's a good proxy for indoor air quality, and so that you can pay attention and learn, so a teacher can teach. Kids aren't falling asleep. And sadly, there's a huge amount of K through 12 schools in the United States and actually around the globe that don't have the proper HVAC systems, indoor air quality management systems to provide that. So there's the article in the New York Times talks about the amount of money that's being deployed to try to address that, but also just to make people aware that this is a real situation. So if you're a local community, my message is you really need to understand that probably one of the largest impacts. I know security is obviously top of mind of all. Security has got to be top of mind for all school boards, undoubtedly. But right behind that, in order to achieve the results that you're trying to achieve, you really need properly ventilated and conditioned spaces so that people can, pay attention. We've all been in those rooms and or office buildings that don't have any ventilation, and you start falling asleep pretty quickly, and you're not really going to retain or learn a lot when that's the case. So it's a good article. You can look it up. I just had it on my desk. I can't refer to it right now, but it was just in last week's New York Times. You can look it up, New York Times School Ventilation. But yeah, we address a lot of that. We've done hundreds and hundreds of K through 12 schools around the country, and have a really good solution for that, just as the other markets that we serve.
That's great. And how did you see the COVID-19 pandemic increasing the awareness and interest in addressing indoor air quality?
It was huge, and it still is huge today. I mean, I think all of us are more aware of how the virus and pandemic was spread in terms of like respiratory grade particulates, and how it was an airborne transmission, and basically ventilation can either really significantly help mitigate that, i.e. by saying like, hey, you need to be outdoors, or if it's not a properly ventilated space, how much more easily that particular pandemic was transmitted. So there was a huge growth in awareness, and then from that awareness, comes like, well, what can we do about it, right? So you increase ventilation, you increase filtration, you can't control and address what you don't measure. So having a good understanding of not just CO2 in buildings, but also of particulate levels and respiratory grade particulate levels is really important. So, particulate, we're talking about 0.3 to 0.5 microns. A lot of times the HVAC industry used to focus on it's called PM10, so it's like much bigger particles, but they're not the ones that go in, that you can easily breathe in, go deep into your lungs, and can create you to get sick for 3 days before you even know you have something. Those are the really small, fine particulates. So, putting systems in place and addressing that has become just more important, and infectious control kind of as a concept has been now moved from healthcare to commercial office spaces, for people who are really trying to think about if I want a productive and healthy work environment, and to maximize all that, I need to consider these as strategic investments and really important aspect of my core business mission. Right? It's not just it was an afterthought in the past, and now it's become if you look at new buildings being built and the ones we're working on today, it's a priority. And people are realizing that that is a very important, not a co-benefit, but it's a very important benefit that I'm going to weigh my business decision on. I'm going to consider the health and productivity of my workforce when I make these strategic investments into my building automation and the technology I put in my building. So it's a huge change, zero doubt.
Mm. And do you see it as a key component to bringing people back to work, is making them feel safe and knowing that they can, come back to the office in person?
Yeah, I mean, we do, but I think more importantly than us is the companies that are building new buildings today see it that way. So they're looking at the environmental impact that their buildings have. They're trying to design them to net zero. They're investing in the ventilation systems and the technologies like ours to optimize both the ESG and the environmental impact of the building, but also to provide the healthiest, safest, most productive work environment that they can. And that pays for itself super easily. It's just making a commitment to do it. The reward and the ROI on it is incredible. So we see more and more and more projects every day going that design direction and having those systems and technologies put into them because of the realization that we all now have. We knew about it before. Now people know about it and they're taking action on it. Or at least I'd say we were probably aware of it, but it wasn't prioritized.
And is the payback primarily through energy savings?
Well, because the built environment has a lot of engineers, and financial buyers are who they are. They love numbers too. So you got engineers and financial people getting together, and they usually look at the ROIs because it's measurable as it relates to energy. And so those ROIs are very strong and attractive. So like we work in laboratory critical environment buildings, those are anywhere from 30 to 50% ROI. So you're talking like, anywhere from 1 to 3 year simple payback kind of, type of projects. In a non-lab K-12 school or commercial office building, you might be 3 to 5, but a 5-year simple payback is 20% IRR. I jokingly say if I was a bank and I was offering that, I'd have a line from here to, California. So the ROIs are super attractive. Now, when you consider the fact that you want to now layer in productivity, health, the amount of people that time are away from the office, et cetera, now you really start to go off the charts. And in some cases, honestly, they're what I would say is an infinite rate of return if you really did the math on it. You don't need to make a big leap in productivity. If you can say that I'm putting in systems to make a 1% improvement in productivity, that if you look at the number one cost being the workforce, employees and salaries, a 1% improvement of that is enormous. If you're Apple or Google or Amazon or whoever it is that that's or a bank that has their employees working in that. So I think what you see more today is people giving some credibility to even a small percentage increase in productivity and health benefits. It has insurance impacts as it relates to critical environments. I mean, the co-benefits are pretty long. And like I said, it's not hard to get to an infinite rate of return when you consider all those factors.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was really interesting to learn more about indoor air quality, how the understanding of it and the impacts have really become more noticeable with the climate change and pandemics occurring around the globe. So really interesting to learn more about how your business is helping to address that. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I very much appreciate and thank you for having me on, and love to talk about it. And more importantly, I think I'd love to see the improvements that are being made in the space that I've been working in my whole career and kind of very passionate about. So I think we are making incredible strides, and really happy to share kind of any insights that we can with your audience. We're kind of like focused on the E in ESG in the environmental side. But I think we're making great strides, and we're seeing more and more clients and more adoption around the globe to build net zero projects. We've probably been involved in more than anybody. We did our first net zero city in Abu Dhabi in 2008, I think it was. I was involved in a project over there. It was a pretty bold project. And since
Yeah.
then, we've been, you can't build net zero buildings without optimizing first, right? It starts with efficiency. You can do it, but it's going to be very expensive. So you really want to make buildings as efficient as you possibly can before you think about kind of decarbonizing them or electrifying them or getting them to net zero. It starts with efficiency. So I'm super excited about it. I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks again to this month's sponsor, the Untangling Circularity Podcast. Listen to new episodes at multivolte.com/podcast.